right, that is how you get it crunk on this show. Oh, I'm pumped up. I'm pumped up for tonight's show now. For those that are just now tuning in, this is Insiders TV, the Thursday night kickoff show. I'm your host, David Kitchen. Joining me, the one, the only, Drew Dinkmeyer. You can catch him at Twitter at Drew Dinkmeyer. You can catch me at Twitter at SoccerDave. And I feel weird calling myself an expert, but people say that I'm an expert, and I help run the site fantasyinsiders.com. So therefore, I'm sort of an expert. And you're with My Fantasy Fix, a site that also does projections, and you guys have the premium tools. I just read the article this afternoon. Good stuff. Drew, how goes it today, sir?
It's going well. I'm excited. I'm glad we could accommodate the early start time here so I could get situated for my Bears game.
Yeah,
tonight.
So for those of you who don't know, not only is Drew one of the top players in daily fantasy, he also is a Bears fan and a Cubs fan. I'm a Cubs fan also, but that's just because they're on WGN. I wasn't someone who was big on the all Chicago teams, just the Chicago teams that played on WGN. So the Bulls and the Cubs growing up. Nashville didn't have those teams, so that's why I cheer for them. But you are in Florida, so how does that work with you being like a Bears fan?
Yeah, so born and raised Floridian, who's a Chicago sports fan, thanks to my dad. My dad grew up in Wilmette, Illinois, just outside of Chicago, one of the suburbs. And when I grew up down here, there weren't any real sports teams going on. I mean, we had the Dolphins, and that was it. We didn't have the Panthers. We didn't have the Heat. We didn't have the Marlins. So it really wasn't a tough sell for my dad to make me a Chicago sports fan. And when I was growing up, when I was real little, the Bears won a Super Bowl when I was like 3. And then when I was, in those prime important years, when you're in like grade school and you have bragging rights over everyone, Michael Jordan made my life so much easier growing up. So I was a proud Chicago sports fan. Still am to this day, although it has been, outside of the Blackhawks, been a little bit of a title drought for Chicago sports fans.
Yeah, I think that's putting it mildly, that there has been a drought. I'm not sure if I told you this, but the Bears actually came to the Titans. Get my shot set up. The Bears actually came down to Nashville last year, and true story, they drank the Nashville bars out of most of the beer. Like by the end, it was like kind of a big story. By the end, all of the Nashville bars were like just serving whatever they could, and obviously Chicago had reason to celebrate last year with that just huge win over the Titans. For those that played daily fantasy and played the Bears, they were happy that they did that.
That game was out of control. I had the Bears defense that day, and they might have had 3 touchdowns. They might have had like 6 or 7 turnovers. And that was like in the first half. It was really, really ridiculous. And I wouldn't mind seeing a repeat of that tonight. That would be nice.
Yeah. Papa Cub says, so you're agreeing there's a drought in Nashville from the Bears. Yes, the Bears and the Beers. That's why there's a drought. But as far as how you did last week with daily fantasy, was it a good week? Was it a bad week? There's a lot of people that had bad weeks in the industry.
I had a rough week, and it was like one mistake here and there. So on DraftStreet, I had Brady as one of my quarterbacks.
Same here.
Which totally submarined a pretty good team otherwise. I put up like 140 with Brady, and that wasn't enough for double ups. So I had a tough week on DraftStreet. I had a really good team on DraftKings, so I did well there. My draft day teams really struggled as well. I had a lot of Victor Cruz. I had him on draft day and on FanDuel, so that hurt. A lot of people had him on FanDuel, so it didn't hurt quite as much. But I found myself on the late Sunday night game needing like one Gates touchdown or one more Pryor touchdown to have a good week, and I couldn't get it in that second half. So it was a little bit frustrating. It was a difficult week for me personally.
I'm with you as far as the Brady pick. I just didn't see him doing that bad. I could never have imagined him doing as bad as what he did. It was pretty. I mean, it was amazing how bad he actually was. So as far as Cruz, I had him on all my FanDuel teams. I was lucky enough to have some other guys, and for some reason in the big money games, I think it was just pure luck. I left Cruz out, and because I needed some salary there, and I went ahead and went with guys that actually did good. We talked about that sweet spot the other week. The wide receivers on FanDuel from 6,500 to 7,500. Victor Cruz, you look at him again tonight, and going against the Bears secondary. What are your thoughts on Victor tonight?
I think he's in a really good spot. You know, he lines up a lot of times in the slot, and the Bears have a rookie corner in the slot that's actually been doing all right early in the season. But he's not particularly experienced, and you know, Cruz. I kind of can't imagine him having 3 bad games in a row. I feel like last week they made a concerted effort to get Hakeem Nicks going. And I feel like this week they'll try to make a concerted effort to get Victor Cruz going. He's the outlet guy. He's the guy that Eli reads on hot reads. And if there's one way that the Bears can impact the Giants' offense this week, it's going to be by pressuring Eli Manning. Because with no Charles Tillman tonight, this is a really thin secondary. And the Bears have been having to bring blitzes to get extra pressure. So if that's the case, and Victor Cruz is the hot read, I could see him racking up a lot of catches tonight. But I like both receivers for the Giants. I like Cruz and I like Hakeem Nicks. You know, no David Wilson. Brandon Jacobs hasn't shown a lot running the ball, and the Bears have been a pretty good run defense. So you figure Eli's going to have to throw it his 40 to 45 times like he has been throughout the season. I think that's good opportunities for both the wide receivers, who are priced pretty fairly across the industry.
Yeah, I mean, especially on FanDuel for those Thursday night games, if you're playing on FanDuel, it would be, I think it might be a little bit of a risk to fade Victor Cruz tonight because he did not have a good week last week. And like you said, they're not going to be running the ball. You have to think that something's going to click. They're going to connect on some sort of long play. The Bears secondary has been struggling. I'm staying away, though, across the industry from that running back situation. I know you are as well.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a trap out there, especially, you know, on a site like FanDuel where they have a bottom minimum salary. There's not as much value in those bottom minimum salary guys a lot of times, so it's not as big of a deal. But on a site like DraftStreet, where you know the prices range from $2,000 to $21,000, a guy like Brandon Jacobs, who's just $3,000, might entice some people. And it's basically a bet on whether he scores because he's not going to be active in the passing game. Darrell Scott was brought back, and he was the guy that was playing about 40% of snaps, mostly on third down and passing downs before. So Jacobs isn't going to get 15 plus carries. He's likely going to get maybe 10 touches, and if he scores, he'll be worth the price. But if he doesn't score, you're looking at maybe 10 carries and 35 yards, something like that. It's not going to be worth it. So I think he's a little bit of a trap on a site like DraftStreet where he's exceptionally cheap.
Yeah, he's really cheap, and we like those values. If you haven't been to fantasyinsiders.com to see Tuttle's recent value, you need to, because he nailed it last week. The guys that actually did play. Of course, there were some value plays that were dependent on injuries, and those guys went ahead and played. But Keenan Allen was one of the guys that he played last week. And on DraftStreet, you can have guys that are in that $3,000 to $5,000 range that just kind of go off, and that's what he did. Another guy that I was actually high on until the Calvin Johnson news broke, and I had him on all my teams with Jeff Cumberland, and he ended up having the best day by far. And I don't say that to brag that much. I say that just because I love punting the tight end position on DraftStreet. It is like it gives me joy to do that.
I think a lot of people like that. They like the idea. Look, if I can get a tight end who can just make one play, he can be worth his price. And there's not as much opportunity cost at the tight end position as there are at the running back or the wide receiver positions. Keenan Allen and Vincent Brown last week combined were about $7.5K on DraftStreet, and I looked at that all week and said, this is way too cheap for those two guys. And then I didn't put either one in my main lineup, and it was silly because I got so stuck on kind of the value at the quarterback position. I played Terrell Pryor and Tom Brady, and I thought, you know what, Peyton Manning's going to be good. He's going to be really good, but is he going to be 30 to 35 points again? I didn't know, and I wish I would have paid up for Peyton Manning because it would have forced me to use one of Keenan Allen or Vincent Brown, who are both great. And one thing that's bothering me a little bit this week is there's way more talk about Keenan Allen than there has been about Vincent Brown. And Vincent Brown went 8 for 140, had a touchdown called back in that game, has been the guy who has had double-digit targets the last 2 games, or 9 targets the last 2 games. I think he's just as valuable, and I actually like his matchup a little bit more than Keenan Allen this week. But I think all the talk has been on Keenan Allen because, look, he's a rookie. He's looking like he's going to be a great draft pick from where he was selected because he fell due to injury concerns in camps. But I think Vincent Brown is right there with him. I think he's just as good of a play this week, and I think a lot of people are kind of overlooking him because the focus and the talk has been so much on Keenan Allen because of the touchdown.
Yeah, Vincent Brown. The thing with Keenan Allen is that most of his yards actually were in garbage time in that fourth quarter.
Yeah.
He caught, I think, 3 passes for like over 70 yards. I forget what the exact numbers were, but basically the Raiders went to a very soft zone defense, basically just keeping the Chargers in front of them. And, I mean, he was wide open, but he didn't have that great of a day until that last bit of garbage time, whereas Vincent Brown was being targeted throughout the night and he was having a good night throughout. So that's where I think that definitely on FanDuel, where their prices are pretty similar, you look at,
they're the same. They're both 4,500.
So for me, I like both, but I'm having to pick one. I'm probably picking Vincent Brown over Keenan Allen.
Yeah, that's the way I'm going, and that's what I had in our write-up today in terms of the value wide receivers. And the other reason that I like that play is because if they play the same sides that they usually do, Vontae Davis, who's the Colts' best cornerback, is going to be lining up against Keenan Allen. And Greg Toller, who's done an okay job this year, but isn't as physically gifted as Vontae Davis, would be lining up across Vincent Brown. And I think that's just a better matchup. And Phillip Rivers likes to really pick on friendly matchups when he finds them. And he heavily targets and zones in on a few guys. So I think Vincent Brown's the stronger play this week where they're priced similarly. And I think in most places, Brown is at least priced below Keenan Allen. So while all the attention in the industry is on Keenan Allen, who looks like he's going to end up being a great draft pick and a really intriguing, exciting young wide receiver, I think this is a better week for Vincent Brown.
I agree. If you want to go a little crazy, you could play them both.
Yep.
And even pair them with Rivers for maybe a GPP play, and they just load up everywhere with Graham and some high-profile wide receivers. As far as like the news that have come out this week, obviously Julio Jones not going to be playing. We'll talk about him in a little bit. And Calvin Johnson came out today that his knee is still swollen. He's not going to practice this week, and he's a game-time decision. I don't feel good about that. And if he's not playing, I don't feel good about that offense. Even if he is playing, I mean, how confident are you in that knee?
Well, if he plays, because he said he was close last week, I kind of feel like you got to trust him. Now, look, his pricing is so different across the industry. On DraftStreet, he's under $10,000. So if he plays on DraftStreet, you're probably going to use him. If he doesn't, if he plays on like FanDuel, where he's like 9,000 or something like that, there's too many other good options. You don't have to worry about it. So I think his pricing is going to dictate his value quite a bit. But that was the thing that kind of screwed me up last week. I didn't have Calvin in any of my lineups, but I had Stafford in a lot of places. And as soon as that news broke, I had to go change all my lineups. And I was kind of caught with about 3 minutes left, and I just wasn't comfortable with what I had. And it ended up being the right gut feeling. I didn't like what I ended up putting out there on a couple sites that I had to change draft day specifically. And it's because once Calvin Johnson is out of the offense, it's a totally different offense. And the one thing that I wish I would have thought of, and it didn't matter because I played the Rams defense in a lot of places, but the Packers defense became an interesting play. And I think the same could be said of Cleveland, who's been a very good defense early in the season. If Megatron's out, I think Cleveland's defense becomes a sneaky play and one that most people aren't thinking of at this point in time because most people are probably planning on Calvin being able to play.
I agree. I actually played because of that. I had a few moves that I made. Luckily, I didn't have Calvin Johnson anywhere except for the team that we made last Friday on the show with Grant Girton and Mr. Tuttle, where Grant picked Calvin Johnson, and he also.
So it was Grant's fault. You want that out there on the record.
Yes.
You want it clear that Grant was responsible for
not
Calvin
only
Johnson's
that pick. I would like to also make it known that he was responsible for the Givens pick from St. Louis. That was his first pick when we started doing the whole round robin choose a FanDuel.
And now was Alshon Jeffrey a member of that?
He was not,
team?
But
okay. There was one big blow-up player that you guys had that did really, really well, correct?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't even know if there's one.
I'm trying to give you credit here. I'm trying to give you the opportunity to claim whoever that
No, our running
player
backs
was.
were good. We had Decker, and I think we had either Pryor or Peyton. So, that is what it is. Papa Cub says, I also like to blame the dog for farts in the room. It is true. She can smell up the room, my dog, that is, because she's on some sort of medicine. Man, that is some hella gas. Anyways, moving on from that to Alshon Jeffrey. Back to Alshon Jeffrey. He was a very valuable player. He was a guy that a lot of people were high on, so I was high on at the beginning of the season because just looking at the experts, that system, it seems like in what's the offensive coordinator's name?
Well, really, it's Mark Trestman who's running the offense.
Yes.
He's doing a lot of the play
calling.
So
the wide receiver 2 in his offenses tend to have a majority, not a majority, but a lot of looks in that offense. So a lot of people were high on Jeffrey just because of his talent and because of that fact. And he struggled at the beginning, but suffice to say he has turned it on. Is he someone that if you were playing tonight, you might be targeting?
Yeah, I think he's a good value. He's still underpriced in most spots across the industry. He's under 10,000 on DraftStreet. I think he's under 6,000 on DraftKings, if I recall correctly. Both are good values, but I think tonight is going to be all about Brandon Marshall. And we've seen it throughout the course of this fantasy season that the squeaky wheel tends to get the grease. And Marshall's been publicly vocal this week about wanting to get the football, wanting to get production, and feeling he's left out of the offense a little bit. You couple that with 2 straight weeks of really good tape from Alshon Jeffrey, 2 really good games where you're unlikely to see coverage rolled so heavily towards Marshall now. And I think this sets up really well. And the other part of that I think is important is Martellus Bennett is active, and that's just another player to draw coverage away from Brandon Marshall. And you look at the Giants secondary, no Corey Webster tonight, he's inactive. No Jaron Hosley, who's their 3rd-string cornerback, he's inactive. They really only have one, NFL caliber cornerback, Prince Amukamara. He's been a little bit banged up throughout the season. He's not a big physical guy that can go up and contend with Jeffrey and Marshall. They're going to have huge height advantages on Amukamara, and then you've got after him it's like Truman McBride. It's not a great situation. So I expect the Bears passing game to be very strong tonight. I think both are viable plays, especially with where they're valued. But I would be more prone to play Marshall than Jeffrey tonight.
And you also are a Cutler fan. I saw, well, not a fan. Are you a Cutler fan, like away from fantasy?
It's one of these things where if you're a Bears fan, beggars can't be choosers. The best quarterback of my life before Jay Cutler was Eric Kramer. And most people don't even know who Eric Kramer was because he really wasn't that relevant of a quarterback. He was like a league average quarterback. And that's probably the best we've ever had. So Cutler has his own idiosyncrasies that can drive people nuts. And I get it. I understand it. But he's the most talented quarterback I've ever seen as a Bears fan. So I'm not going to hate on Cutler.
I like Cutler. I'm obviously a Vandy fan, so I saw him when he had no protection at all, getting crushed. But I really like him tonight. I want to say that this is Fantasy Insiders TV, the Thursday night NFL kickoff show. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. I saw this guy just appeared in chat, and that's why I said it, because I was going to say Grant Girton is in the chat. There is a rumor, he said, that he got called out. I didn't call you out, Grant. I just merely said that you picked Chris Givens last week, and tomorrow on the show you can redeem yourself.
Well, now you said he could redeem himself tomorrow. Before you just said that he had picked Chris
right.
Givens.
So it's not like I said he owed me $25 for that ticket. Because here's the thing: I thought I was entering the ticket into the bomb. It was not. It was actually into the qualifier. So had I have won, I wonder what would have happened.
Oh, that would have been interesting.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see. Papa says that the ump's confirmed on replay that Grant was called out correctly. So very nice. We had Kush Monkeys 3. Kush Monkeys 3. I don't know if I've ever seen you around here, so welcome to the site. He says, what's the best value play tonight or on FanDuel or any site?
I'm looking at my cheat sheets now, which is one of the items that we have over at myfantasyfix.com. Plug away. And I've got my FanDuel cheat sheet up now. And looking across for the value plays for tonight, I think the best value play tonight is, I'm going to say Victor Cruz at 7,400. I think he's the top play of this game tonight at FanDuel, followed closely by Alshon Jeffrey at 6,300. I think those two guys are the strongest. If we want to go across some of the sites, I can do that if you'd like.
We'll come back to that. As far as who I'm rolling with, we didn't really talk about it because we talked about the receivers, but I think that Forte has a big night tonight. And so if you're playing the Thursday-only games, or if not Thursday-only games because that would be useless, but if you're playing the Thursday start games, then I would roll up both Forte and Cruz. I would, because I think unless you think that neither of those guys are going to do well, I just think that Forte, even though he is 8,600, I think on FanDuel, he's a guy that can score a lot of points, and I actually have him higher than Jamal Charles, which some people might disagree with. Some people think it's going to be the Jamal Charles show, which I realize. But if I had either Forte or Charles, I would probably take Forte with Charles being number 2.
Interesting. And that brings up an interesting little strategy sidebar, for lack of a better term. Do you like, when doing tournaments or putting together teams, do you like melding game situations into the roster? So you talk about taking Forte and Cruz, and that's not only necessarily taking the individual players. That in some ways is combining the game situation that, hey, if the Bears get up big, you're probably going to get more rushing attempts from the Bears in Matt Forte, and probably going to get more passing attempts from the Giants and Victor Cruz. So I know a lot of people talk about leveraging like quarterback and wide receiver combinations. Do you like, or do you ever consider leveraging game situations into your roster?
Yeah, I do, and I will put a wide receiver on one team and the running back on another team if they both have really good matchups. What I try to stay away from is running back on both teams, because then you're just talking about a lot of time off the clock unless both have some really long plays. That's going to be it. But even in this case, I like Forte because let's say that, hell freezes over and the Giants actually have a passing game and they put some points on the board. Forte is still in play there because he is definitely a check down receiver. He'll get a half a point per catch on FanDuel and a point on other sites. So that's why I think Forte is a great play, and that's why I think that he's probably I would put his points right next to Charles, but he's going to be cheaper than Charles. So that's why I would play him over Charles. I just don't think you can fade Forte if you're playing in the Thursday night games.
Interesting. I'm more on the receiver side, but I like what you're saying with Forte because there are multiple outs with a back like Forte. With backs that can catch the ball out of the backfield, there's multiple outs to how they can get their production. It's the same thing with rushing quarterbacks. There's multiple ways that they can find a way to get their points. And that's always a good thing. When you're deciding between two players, I like to lean on the side of the player who has multiple outs in terms of ways that they can score their points. I think that's a good thing to think about in baseball as well, because a lot of people, if you're talking about like a Jacoby Ellsbury or a David Ortiz and spending on one night, and they both have great matchups, Ellsbury's a guy who can get his points in a lot of different ways. Ortiz is probably going to need to hit for power. And I think those opportunities give you a little bit more flexibility, and a term that we like to use on our SiriusXM show, optionality to your point scoring.
Is that like a made-up word?
It's one I found in the middle of a show and just clung to, and it's now become
optionality. I like it. We did have. Let's talk about some cheap guys on DraftStreet. Ant Manhan. I don't know how you say that name, but welcome, Ant Manhan, to Insiders Chat. I feel like I need to speak with an accent when saying your name. Do you guys like Greg Little on DraftStreet for $3K? He saw multiple targets from Whedon last week. Drew, let's talk about some guys that you might like on DraftStreet for really cheap. Would Greg Little be one of those guys? I know Tuttle mentioned him earlier this week in a talk that I had with him.
Yeah, he's a guy. He saw 5 targets last week, and that was tied for second on the team. They didn't throw a ton last week, and Whedon really spread it around. You got 5 targets for Bess, 5 targets for Cameron. As I'm looking through my little target sheet here, if you look at week-by-week consistency of targets for Greg Little, he started the season with a lot of targets, 10, 12, 18. Then Josh Gordon came back, or 10, 12, 8, excuse me. Then Josh Gordon came back, 2 in week 4 and 5 in week 5. He's not a big enough play wide receiver in terms of that can turn one target into a lot of points, that he's not the type of guy that I'm identifying. If I was looking really cheap on DraftStreet this week, one of the guys that Mr. Tuttle wrote about extensively throughout the site as I was combing through the Fantasy Insiders articles is a guy named Marlon Brown, 3,596 on DraftStreet. He returned to a limited practice yesterday for Baltimore. He missed last week's game, and that's why he's priced down a little bit. I'm trying to find now if he practiced today. It looks like he got another limited practice, and so that's a good sign. No downgrades during the week. If he's active, as Dan mentioned in his write-ups, Baltimore's probably going to have to throw the ball a lot. He's their number 2 wide receiver. He's gotten consistent red zone looks. And if they have to throw the ball 40 to 50 times because they get behind or because their run game is ineffective, he could easily see 7 to 9 targets. And that's a really good spot for that price. So he's one of the cheap wide receivers. And I have to give out a shout out to Mr. Tuttle for identifying that one in the in the scrubs.
Yeah, he's definitely a guy that I'm not playing in the Thursday contest because I'm just not sure yet. I don't want to, unless I'm playing maybe in a tournament. I've got multiple entries. I'm putting him in there. But yeah, on Sunday, definitely. The thing about DraftStreet this week is the salaries are a little bit softer, it seems like. You talked about Calvin Johnson under 10K. It seems like a lot of the players generally who would be higher or not. There's not a lot of like hands-off players. I mean, Peyton Manning's 21K, but other than that, there's not a lot of guys that you're like, ooh, I don't know if I can put him on my team because he's so expensive. So I think that you only really have to go with 1, maybe 2 cheap guys, depending on your strategy, but you don't have to go so cheap. We have basically Brandon Jacobs at 3K. Papa Cub mentioned this. I saw a tweet earlier. The Bears are missing their top 3 defensive tackles. What are your thoughts on defensive tackles, how it relates to daily fantasy? Is it a position that basically they just bring another big guy in there and it's not that much of a difference? Or do you think that not having your top 3 tackles, maybe having limited depth there at the tackle position, is something that the Giants are going to try to exploit with Jacobs?
I think they'll try to exploit it early, and I do think it's something that makes a difference. And it's one of the things that I always tell people when they're asking questions early in the week. Is that it's not necessarily just about the guys that are on the injury report for the offensive side of the ball. It's the defensive side of the ball as well that make a big difference. Now, in this case, Brandon Jacobs looks like he's running in quicksand whenever he's getting the ball. So I don't know that it necessarily matters because unless they're opening up huge gaping holes. And this Giants offensive line hasn't been able to do that all season. I just don't see him being able to break off enough runs, and I don't see them staying committed to the running game enough for him to have enough of value. As we mentioned earlier, I think he's a little bit of a trap on DraftStreet, and it comes down to simply a bet on whether he scores a touchdown. And that's whether they can get the ball down around the 2 or 3 yard line. And if they can, and he scores a touchdown, he'll pay off his value handsomely. But if he can't score a touchdown, I don't see any way he pays off his value. And I think that's what we get when we get back to you talking about Forte and lots of different outs and ways that they can score their points. Brandon Jacobs has a very limited opportunity set to score his points. It's basically touchdown or not.
Yeah, so let's play around with some sites, specifically DraftStreet and FanDuel. I've got a site open. Let's see here. Nice. You see the grass? Okay. So this is an expert league that I just entered. And I figure since we are quote-unquote experts, it would make sense. We don't want to...
So as experts, we're starting Matt Flynn.
No, this is just... I had to enter some players, so I couldn't let go of this game. So it looked like a fairly decent game. No offense to... Let's see. Who is it that we're playing against? McKinley's Dream. He's got 89 wins, and he's the one that posted it. So maybe he knows a lot, but McKinley's Dream just sounds like one that could be an easy win for us, I feel like. I mean, whose name is McKinley's Dream? It sounds like McKinley's a girl, so maybe he's her dream?
I'm just going to let you keep going with this. Just see where it goes.
What do you think McKinley's Dream means?
I have no idea. Isn't McKinley like a big mountain?
Mount McKinley, yes. So maybe
he's a hiker.
McKinley's, but he's got an S. So maybe like the mountain dreams of him. I don't know. Whoever McKinley is, they're having some sort of dream. Let's go on to the games, though. Let's pick one person. This is the expert league, so I'm going to put in Vincent Brown as the person that we have to have. So, who is someone that you need to have in there?
So, expert league, we're dealing with a 5,500 cap.
55,000.
Right?
5,500 would be really hard.
Yeah, 5,500 would be really tough. I don't know what else we could put around Vincent Brown. All right, so my one guy, if I'm putting someone in there tonight, let's go with tonight, Victor Cruz. I think Victor Cruz, you're not able in a $55,000 cap to spend quite as much at the wide receiver position. So this 7,500, we've got a Sunday only game. All right, so as I was saying,
I didn't know that when I picked it up.
Okay, let's go with DeMarco
Yeah,
Murray.
I would agree.
Okay, 7,800. That's going to be around the top of the barrel that we're going to be able to spend on an individual position. But you got DeMarco Murray against the Redskins defense that's really struggled all season long, both against the pass and the run. You look at their run defense this year, and they're giving up 4.7 yards per carry. They've given up 4 rush touchdowns in their first 4 games, and you've got a very high total in that game. So I think that's a really good opportunity for DeMarco Murray.
I'm going with Chad Henne. I think for an expert-only league, this is a good, solid option at 5,300 because it gives us a lot of room. Whedon would be another guy that I might throw in there if I was thinking about it. Or even Alex Smith. I think Alex Smith has a really good week this week at 6,500. But Henne is going to throw the ball and throw it a lot. So I think in the second half he redeems himself, and that's why I've got him in there at 5,300.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go next with Garrett Graham at tight end. And I think he, on a lot of sites this week, is going to be almost a must-play at the tight end position. It's almost going to be Jimmy Graham or Garrett Graham. Pick your graham cracker for the tight end position because he is so cheap, and that 5,100 price tag is going to allow us to do some other things at the other positions.
Yes. So I was wanting to go Blackman, but now it seems like we have plenty of salary. So I'm going to go with Jamal Charles, and that would give us 12.9 basically for 2 wide receivers. So almost in that sweet spot at 6,500 apiece.
Yeah, and we could still go, Blackman or one of the guys that I really like in that sweet spot at the higher end of the sweet spot. I've got a couple of guys pegged, but one of the guys I really like is Pierre Garcon at 7,000.
I like Pierre.
I've got him as a top 5 wide receiver option.
Good call. Good. I feel like it's like the Family Feud where someone gives an answer and everyone is like, "Good call, good call." That's
yeah.
That's exactly how it was with that pick. So I like Pierre. Let's put him in there.
And look at that, we're getting some leverage to our lineup as well with that Cowboys Redskins game, which has a very high total this weekend. We've got Murray, on the side of the favorite, the running back on the side of the favorite. And Murray's a guy like Forte that we talked about earlier that you have optionality with. That if the game, if they get behind, he can still catch a lot of dump-off passes and turn his value that way. I think it'll be a close game, so I don't think game situation will dictate too much of the value here. But if it was to get out of hand in one direction, I think the Cowboys would be the direction you'd want to have the side of the running back on, and the Redskins would be the side you'd want the receiver on.
I agree with that. I'm trying to find out. I don't want to go Dwayne Bowe. I just do not want to do it. And the options underneath are kind of...
Yeah, Garcon might put us in a little bit of a tight spot.
I don't think a tight spot. So here...
Well, yeah, the other way we could go, and this would be big-time leverage, is we could go... Instead of Garcon, we could go Reggie Wayne, which would allow us T.Y. Hilton, or we could come off Charles and go down to maybe an Arian Foster.
Here's what I would like to do. You talked about Marlon Brown. I would have him in there, but I like Denarius Moore again this week.
Interesting.
I don't know, though. I would probably rather play Brown over Moore if I knew that he was going to play. Let's come off of Charles.
Give me some Arian Foster.
And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put in Arian Foster. Going against St. Louis, that will allow us 6.7, or lower. And we have more options, including...
Oh, we got a lot of good options.
Yeah, including Josh Gordon, Colston. I mean, Colston, his price there is pretty cheap. And then you have Blackman even at 6,200. So where would you like to go for wide receiver?
I think this comes down. I think now we have to decide how we're going to approach our defense. Because the question is, do we want to spend a little bit more on defense? And some of the defenses that I have highlighted, like a Cincinnati at a 5,300.
Okay.
Or a Jets at a 5,000 or a Lions at a 5,000. Those are kind of the options if you're not going to spend up on Houston or San Fran or Seattle or Denver. That's what I've been looking at this week.
Well, give me what you would do. We have plenty of options. So what, if it was up to you, what option would you take? Would you spend more or would you spend less?
I think in this situation, I'd probably be looking at going with the Jets defense at 5,000, allowing us to have the full 6,700 or maybe 6,600, depending on the kicker we choose. And I think that would allow us to get, either a Steve Smith or a Josh Gordon or a Marquez Colston. I mean, those are all really good options. That's a really good receiving core we have put together with 2 really good running backs as well.
Colston against New England is definitely intriguing. But I think... I think we've got to go with Gordon because he is definitely going to provide. I mean, he will get some looks, if anything, at the end at least. So that gives us 5,200 for a kicker, and kickers are always kind of a shot in the dark. But
Just looking through that list, I
Dan
like
Bailey.
Dan Bailey a lot. He's a guy that I always gravitate towards, and it's because the Cowboys' offense, it tends to move the ball consistently throughout the game, but sometimes they get hunkered down in the red zone. And this is a little bit of a hedge on DeMarco Murray because, look, if Murray's not scoring touchdowns, Bailey's probably kicking field goals. They're probably not going to, do what they did last week, which is just throw a ton of touchdowns. So it's a little bit of a hedge. But I think Bailey is a little bit underpriced as far as kickers go, and kicker selection is a little bit of a crapshoot, but that's the way that I'd go.
So there you go. We are officially McKinley's dreams nightmare.
Or McKinley's nightmare. There you go.
So very nice. It's always fun putting together team. Like I enjoy putting together teams on Fridays with Grant, even though he picks Chris Givens and Tuttle, just because it allows people. You can actually viewers can see the process that kind of go through other people's heads. So, if you want to take that lineup, just change out one or two picks. Don't because it's a really good lineup. Put in Shorts or put in Blackman.
Yeah, Shorts or Blackman could fit, and you could upgrade the defense.
Or putting Keenan Allen. Just don't steal the lineup straight up because McKinley's dream would be upsets. Let me tell you that. As far as other games that you might like, who are some guys in the fix as far as the quarterback position that you really like this week?
Well, I think it's one. We're getting to the point where Peyton Manning is on a whole different level than everybody else. So I wrote basically our top plays in the non-Peyton Manning division. Meaning, if you can afford Peyton Manning, it's fine to take him. He's the most consistent quarterback out there. He's averaging 376 yards and 4 touchdowns a game. Like it's really ridiculous. But outside of him, I think Aaron Rodgers is my number 2 quarterback this week. And again, that Baltimore game, I have the feeling that game ends up being a lot of plays. Both teams play a little bit fast. Both teams throw the ball a lot this week. I think both teams abandon the running game a little bit early. I think that's a good thing for Rodgers. His price is very appealing on DraftStreet. It's just about $15,500. On other sites, he's priced up a little bit more. I think he's pretty favorable on DraftKings too, compared to the other top quarterbacks. 9,300 on DraftKings compared to 10,300 for Breeze or 11,800 for Peyton Manning. The other 2 quarterbacks that I like that are good quarterbacks that are down on their value a little bit this week are Andrew Luck. That San Diego defense, they're bottom 5 in the NFL in yards per attempt allowed and bottom 5 in the NFL in yards per carry allowed. So Indianapolis should be able to move the ball pretty consistently. I like Andrew Luck playing on the road on Monday night. I also like Robert Griffin III. Again, playing in a high total game on the road, Sunday Night Football. After the bye week, a week removed, this is the week that I think we start to see Robert Griffin III look a little bit more like the Robert Griffin III we've expected.
I love Robert Griffin III this week, and I love, let's see, I love Andrew Luck. I think a lot of people are going to be on both of those guys. Peyton Manning, we were talking earlier today, some of the Fantasy Insiders guys, if there's ever a week to fade Peyton Manning, this would be it. So,
and why is that? Because you think the game gets out of hand and he doesn't get opportunities? Because I expected the price on some sites it has gotten enormous. Like on DraftKings, it's gotten enormous. But I expected the price on DraftStreet to be mid-20s, and it's just 21. It didn't move much from last week. That was surprising to me.
It just seems like there are a lot of other options out there that let you get more well-balanced teams, I guess, across sites. Of course, if you're kind of going with the Stars and Scrub sites or Stars and Scrub strategy, then I don't think Manning is a bad play, especially on, I guess I'm more focused on the one quarterback sites. If you're playing the multiple quarterback sites, I can see how it'd be somewhat different.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I've been a proponent of paying up on the one quarterback sites for the elite quarterback. I didn't do it last week. I didn't have Manning on either draft day or DraftKings, and it really hurt. I do my lineup construction stuff on Friday, so I haven't started really looking at putting lineups together yet and how much it impacts those. I know the salary on DraftKings is very, very pricey, and so I'll probably be leaning for Rodgers in that case. But it'll be interesting to see how people play that. I think he's going to be a little bit lower owned this week though, because I think the consensus out there is people are concerned that the game gets out of hand and maybe he gets pulled early. And I think that's less of a concern in the NFL. I think it's being a little bit overblown right now.
Yeah. I I guess I guess we could be over it. That might be one of the things where you think kind of we're overthinking things, basically.
I think there's a chance that that happens. Now, the biggest risk to Peyton Manning is that the defense scores a bunch of touchdowns, right? Because then he's not even on the field. And the good news for if you're thinking about Peyton Manning is that Chad Henne doesn't have the same proclivity to throw pick sixes that Blaine Gabbert does. So I think there's a little bit more safety in that. And we didn't talk about this quite enough when we were just constructing that roster, but I do think the Jags passing game has some value to it this week. And Chad Henne, I like on two quarterback sites or tough, an experts pricing league there. I think that's a decent play. But two quarterback sites, I think Chad Henne could be a really nice play this week because I think it's hard to envision a scenario where he doesn't throw for 250 yards and a touchdown, even if it's all in garbage time. And on a lot of sites, that'll be enough for him to earn his value.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. So you like going Peyton on a site like FanDuel.
I have to play around with the roster construction and see what it does to me, but I would not be opposed to doing it this week. I'm looking at the difference in price on FanDuel. So Peyton's at 10.8, Rodgers is at 9.4. I'll probably end up with Rodgers, but that's close enough that I wouldn't be opposed to doing it. Where DraftStreet, it's 21 versus 15. That's a huge difference. In DraftKings, it's 11.8 versus 9.3. That's a huge difference. But on sites where it's a little bit tighter, I wouldn't be opposed to doing that. And after getting so burnt by not having Peyton Manning on main teams last week, I might be reacting in the other direction on it this week. I might be underselling the potential of a blowout because I'm so nervous about Peyton Manning destroying me like he did last week.
Let's play a game. You know what that game is?
I like it.
It's called Put Together a DraftStreet Team. Thursday night games. Let's see. It's 6:56. Let's try to get it done in under 2 minutes. Can we get it done in under 2 minutes? I think so,
Yeah,
too.
I think
you go
so.
first.
Thursday
night games.
Thursday night games? Thursday night games.
1 minute, 55 seconds.
Yes, plug in
Arian Foster. Just for the heck of it, I'm going to go Brandon Jacobs just because we've been talking about him, and I want to see him score 2 touchdowns tonight.
You son of... Okay. I'm going to go with Brandon Marshall.
Fair enough. I'm going to go with Jamal Charles.
Okay. I'm going to go with, and this might limit us, but I think we need to spend on at least one quarterback, so I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers.
It's fine with me. We'll play it risky and go, I don't want to go Brown. I want to go, let's see, tick, 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 tick. Yeah, I'll go Brown. What the heck? We should have plenty of salary now.
Okay. Yeah, now we're rolling. Let's go with RG3.
And we would take off Brown. We have still a minute left. Tight end position. I'd rather actually punt the tight end position than Brown. I'd rather get a good receiver. So tight end.
The guys that I like near the bottom of tight end, I like Martellus Bennett and Garrett Graham. And I know we're getting a lot of questions on Bennett or Graham. And by a lot, I mean the one from my father in chat. I like Bennett more than Graham on sites that they are priced the same. On sites that they are priced wildly different,
I'm actually going to go Rudolph and take off Marlon Brown. So we have two positions. We have wide receiver, a flex, and a defense. So we can go crazy with the wide receiver and the flex.
Okay. Let's go with. Do you want which position would you like to pick? The wide receiver.
I'll pick the flex.
Okay. Let's go with Hakeem Nicks then as our other wide receiver.
Maybe you didn't hear me. I said we could spend a lot at this pick. Oh no, we got 75-82. Never mind. Okay, so I'll go. Somehow I want to take the Jaguars defense, but no, we won't do that. Lord. Okay, so we have 15-164. I think we might have just broke the 16 or the 2-minute mark. I'm going to go. Where is this guy at? He might be up.
Who are you looking for?
I'm going to go with Forte. I'm going to do it. I like Forte. We'll go on both. Okay. So that leaves us $2,000. Let's pick a defense real quick.
Oakland looks like the one to me.
Looks like the one we're going to be playing. I don't have a problem with that defense.
Playing Charles against Oakland is a little bit of a weird combo.
This is a 50-50. It's a double up. If you want, we can go Redskins against Dallas.
I think I like the Raiders more. I'll be honest though. I think a Marlon Brown, Martellus Bennett, or Garrett Graham combo, and then spending up a little bit more on the defense.
Then let's do that. Brown and I'm not a huge fan of Graham this week. I'd rather go Bennett.
Okay. We're heavy on the Bears.
And that means we'll go off of Forte.
Okay.
Go back
to Murray.
Just like FanDuel. And then that gives us 37. I mean, we can play a lot of people for that. So Packers on down.
I could get behind the Packers.
Especially if they're going to be forced to run. I like the Packers. I'm trying to see the Browns. We don't know if Calvin's playing.
The Browns would be a really good defense if you're betting on Calvin Johnson being out.
So there you go. That's our team. Boom, done. Well, that will be it. That's how we end the show. I feel like we went over by like 2 minutes.
That's all right. I haven't heard the knocking at my door from the guy with the wings and the pizza and my.
I'm talking about the game that we like to play, the DraftStreet game.
Oh, that was the game. It was okay.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Yeah,
I think I'm not exactly sure, but I think
the purpose was to get the team in under 2 minutes, and we failed. We will do better again. It's like lightning round DraftStreet.
Okay.
We'll figure it out. Anyways, this has been Insiders TV. Hopefully we have helped you out some. We want to help and not hurt. Six Picks Kyle, before we leave, he says Murray or Martin. I like Murray on most sites, but Mr. Tuttle is on Martin. I'll let you be the tiebreaker there.
Ooh, man. I think they're really, really close. I have them side by side in our rankings. I think Murray is safer, because I think it's a higher scoring environment, but I think Martin is the guy that I'd play in GPPs or tournaments.
That makes sense. So, anyways, that is the episode of Thursday Night Insiders TV. Drew Dinkmeyer, you can find him at Drew Dinkmeyer. You can find him also at myfantasyfix.com, and also the Twitter for them. The tweets is at myfantasyfix. There you go. I got it right.
Yes. You got it.
Okay, good.
Chris.
And I'm Soccer Dave at Soccer Dave on Twitter, and you can always find me there and fantasyinsiders.com. Anyways, that will do it. We'll get off with some That sounded dirty. We will leave with this song. Oh, my iPad kept on playing, and so right now the song is Chicago Bears Can Suck It.
Chicago Bears fan, I got a message for you. Chicago Bears can suck it. Suck it.
All right, that'll do it.
Can suck it. Suck it. Chicago Bears can suck it. Suck it. It's okay.